Yeah, yeah. So, Mike, so let's tuck into this.
Yeah.
What was the thing that got you into becoming a mechanic? And you have a little bit of offside story here as well, because I met you through Cam Wilson through
Yeah.
Canadian Mechanic Hangout, and I think that's kind of somewhere in your backstory, first year kind of stuff in there too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly. When we did that when I was a first year apprentice, and we'll get to that as we go along, I guess. But yeah, where it all started for me was I had a so growing up, I lived in a suburban neighborhood in Mississauga, Ontario, and down the street from us was a friend of my dad's, and his name was Tom Malone. And Tom Malone's a voice actor. He's done Super Bowl ads. He's done like the viewer discretion is advised. Like that's his voice, right? And so
Okay.
he worked from home. He was always around. Him and my dad did all kind of renovation projects, and he was always there, and he was always wrenching in the garage. And he picked up one summer. It was just like for a couple of weeks, every now and then you would just see a flatbed truck go down the street to Tom's place with an old Datsun on the back, like a 240Z, and he
Uh-huh.
had a green one, a blue one, and a red one. And initially, he had picked up the red one to rebuild it, and he needed a parts car. So he bought a parts car out of California, and the ad for the parts car said the floors are rotted out. So he's like, okay, I'll pick some parts off it, whatever. We'll see where it goes. And it shows up in Mississauga, Ontario, and what they thought was rotted out floorboards was just a thick layer of undercoating that had peeled off, and the car was in mint condition otherwise. So now this guy's got these two perfectly restorable Datsun 240s, right? And he's like, fuck, what do I do? So he bought the third green one, and the red one that he had originally, he just kind of like did a quick and dirty, like cleaned the car up, made it run good, made it look nice, and flipped it for profit. And then the blue one, over a number of years, like he rotisseried the car. He had every body panel like treated, and like everything was done immaculately. Beautiful
Mm-hmm.
fucking original engine, triple Weber side drafts, a nice lumpy cam in it, like special exhaust from Japan, like some rare, all that kind of stuff. He did
Uh-huh.
all kinds of neat shit. Power steering column out of a something modern that he had hooked up to like a variable rate system, and like just the guy was a nerd. He was a geek. Like he was hacking into satellite boxes in the '90s and shit. Like that's just the way he is, right? So I spent a lot of time over there with him as a kid, and he spent a lot of time at our place. Taught me, the suck, squeeze, bang, blow, and how to fix a bicycle and all that kind of stuff.
That's
So
not very political
hey,
now.
hey,
That's
hey, I
not
still
very
I still
political.
call it tranny fluid, and you can't stop me.
So do
I didn't
I.
I didn't move into the middle of nowhere to be politically correct, right? So
Fair enough.
so
It's funny.
uh,
I don't think that our American friends that are listening to this will realize that we are probably less politically correct here in Canada than they are.
oh yeah. Yeah, it
Oh
gets
yeah,
tough.
bud.
It gets rough and
Oh
tough
yeah.
up here. Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. Living, growing up in igloos, and
Yeah.
so
Oh yeah, my
you
polar
were
bear
working
broke
on a
down,
lot
so
of
we had to
240
move stores.
Zeds,
Yeah. Sorry, what's that?
and going. You were working on a whole lot of 240 Zeds, and you
Yeah,
were
as a little
you're
guy.
working with the Mooses, and where. So from that and him teaching all that, what was your introduction there specifically? Like, did he introduce you to a dealership or a
No,
small shop?
so what ended up happening, how I got into it as a career. So this was like really early on as a little guy. And that's what sparked my interest, was just I was exposed to mechanical stuff, and I was a really intelligent little kid. And so I was like a really good talker even from a really young age, and so adults liked showing me stuff like that because I would really like take it on. But uh how I got into it as a career, like I always kind of wanted to do it, but I wasn't like certain about it, or like because my dad is an electrician, and he was a foreman on a lot of job sites doing a high rise in downtown Toronto, making a lot of money. I did work for one summer on one of those construction sites as a drywall laborer. I didn't know what direction I was going to go in, and I knew, working on cars is a dirty job, and you got to buy a lot of tools, and I'll have an easier time as an electrician and whatever. But me and my dad kind of stopped talking to each other. He moved away when I was 15, so it was like, hey, I got to figure something out, right? And so I was in high school, and I kept getting like kicked out of schools and in all kinds of trouble, and I was just a shithead kid. And then I had a co-op placement in second semester, grade 11, which I ended up attending at the second high school that I went to after I got kicked out of the first one. And then, so I'm going to this co-op placement, and it was at a Ford dealership, a big Ford dealer in Mississauga, the same one that me and Cam ended up working at together. It was like a 25 bay shop. They had like a lot of techs there. Really good place to learn.
Mississauga, wait, Mississauga. Okay. You might have worked with one of my we'll talk after, but I'm pretty sure you might have worked with a couple of people that I know personally.
Yeah, it's
Small
possible.
world. Anyway,
Yeah,
so you're at this Mississauga Ford store.
yeah. You can omit this from the thing, but it was Aaron Wood Ford.
Aaron Wood?
Yeah,
Yeah. Aaron Wood Ford. So do you know Daniel Ciccone?
no,
Okay. So I know he worked at probably all of the Ford stores in Mississauga. He was a
never even heard his
self-proclaimed
name.
Okay, he was a
Never even heard of him.
self-proclaimed engine guy. He was the guy doing all the diesel heads, or at least he was claiming he was doing all the diesel heads on all
Yeah,
the
a lot of guys
Fords
claim a lot of
many
things.
moons
I met a
ago.
lot of guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway,
So
so
you're
yeah,
at Mississauga.
so I'm in Mississauga. I'm in high school. I'm in grade 11, and I get this co-op placement at this Ford dealership. And life was pretty rough for little Mikey at the time, and it just kind of clicked. Like I really enjoyed the work I was doing. I really enjoyed learning about cars, and I really liked the feeling of like belonging to that team. Like there was a lot of guys there that were really nice to me. They saw I was like a troubled young guy. They gave me really good guidance and stuff. So I really really enjoyed it. And what I ended up doing is for grade 12. I in first semester grade 12 I was supposed to do like my English and my math and whatever credits I needed, and then for second semester I was going to do another placement at the dealer. Yeah, I got kicked out of that school in like 3 weeks. So
Hmm.
they were just like, hey, like go to the Ford dealer, go do the co-op, do all your homework and all your credits and everything by yourself, like in like booklets and stuff, and write your final exams. So I did 3 semesters right out of the gate at the end of high school at this Ford dealership. While I was doing the co-op placement, I was hired like after those hours to work the rest of the day and weekends and stuff like that. And I worked there for probably 7.5 years. I got my mechanics license. When I came back from second year, I went flat rate because they were paying us based on our training levels. And I mean, I was a first year
Okay.
changing turbos in school buses, and the other first years were
Ah,
like cleaning their tools, and they were lazy and they didn't know how to do anything. And my manager was like, hey, like if you want to make money, like because of the way our pay structure is, I can't just pay you more than this other kid. But like if you want to go flat rate, and they thought I was gonna start. They thought I was gonna sink. Like, oh, there's no way this guy's gonna
yeah.
lose it, get mad, throw his
Yeah.
shit. And I was just making so many hours. I pissed everybody off. I was the young guy making less than everybody else and just fucking working twice as hard. He's taking all the jobs. What the fuck? And so
It's
that
interesting. You bring up pay plan. You bring up training level, and how many times do we have to say this during the podcast? The more training you get, the more money you make. And yes, you might have to go flat rate to make it, but if you got the drive and you get the training, guess what fucking happens? You get
yeah,
fucking paid.
well, if you know how to do your job, you're gonna excel. Any like I've seen a lot of guys like every technician says the same thing. Oh, I should be making more money. And I've seen a lot of guys claim that know what they're worth, and they're good guys and they are worth that more money. But for every guy that I've seen like that, I've seen 2 guys that just like to complain and they aren't worth a shit. So it's hard to it's
It's hard.
hard. You know what I mean?
Brother, it's why I built the survey. It's
Yeah,
why I built the survey. It's as much protection for mechanics as it is for service leaders who are looking at trying to look at mechanics objectively, not
yeah.
subjectively. Objectively, is I'm worth so much more money. Well, are
Prove
you?
it. Prove it.
Like if I look at if you go back to the statistics, I'm getting pretty close to 500 technicians on the survey. There is almost no exceptions to my rule. My rule right now, the rule of three. So level one, level two, level three. Level one, no more than 40 grand. And now this is US, not
Yeah.
Canada, folks. For those who haven't caught up yet thus far, 20. It's 40 grand US for level one complete. It's 60 grand level two complete, and it's
Yep.
80 grand and up for level three complete or more.
Yep.
There is almost no exceptions across the board. No except, and it doesn't matter. And at a certain point, it's about 18 months. At about 18 months, your time in trade is almost irrelevant. It's like, oh, I got 10 years in. Oh, I got 15 years in. I should be making so much more money. But you got your level 1.
Yeah, exactly.
You got your level 1.
You don't have your training. You
The
don't know how to
dealership
diagnose a
can,
circuit. You don't know how a CAN bus works. You don't know how a transmission works. You don't know anything other than how to hang brakes on a car. You got to
right?
know your
There is,
worth, but that doesn't mean just know that you're worth a lot. You got to know like exactly what you're worth. Like, are you a guy who can handle a work order with 6 different complaints and 6 different skill categories and get it all done, or are you gonna have to pass it off to somebody else?
thank you.
You
And
know?
we want to send the message to those mechanics out there that are constantly complaining about making enough money. We
Mm-hmm.
want like I want them all to make more money. Literally my founding principle. I want them to be happier, healthier, more productive. More
Oh yeah.
productive means more money. At
Yep.
the end of the day, happier, healthier, more productive. But if you don't do the training and don't like if you've got a service manager who won't send you for training and they're going, "Oh, well,
You
you
got to start
know,
working somewhere
you
else
didn't
because
do that well in the last one." It's like, "Ugh."
if they're not going to train you, like if you're not learning, you're over. It's over already.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If they're not willing to send you for training, you have to find a leader who's willing to send you for training,
Mm-hmm.
and you got to hound it because I know one of my good friends, Russell Wickham, has said, and I think he's almost stopped saying it now, but the standard rules of the more you know, the less you make. Yes, it happens when you're not working for a good leader.
Yep, it does.
Fundamentally speaking, if you're not working for a good leader, it does. That is true.
I've had
It
that
is true.
happen. I've had that happen at every single dealership I've worked at. The more you know, the less you make. You show up and you act stupid, and you get ball joints and brakes and like a clunking noise over bumps, and you get tune-ups and like oil changes that you can upsell easy shit on and all that kind of stuff. And then the second they realize you're any good, you get like, oh, like every 4 hours, all the lights on the cluster turn on, and then they go away. Stuff like that. And then
And
if
bus
you
trailers, gotta love them.
and then the first time you get a job like that and you excel at it and you have a good diagnostic process and you apply yourself and you get it done, then they're like, holy shit, this guy's good. And they start feeding you all these jobs, and then you go like, hey, like something's got to change. Either you're going to have to start paying me by the hour because this shit doesn't pay, or
Mm-hmm.
like you're going to have to pay me more. Oh, well, we can't pay you more because we have a structured pay plan. It's like, we'll figure out a way to structure it where I'm if I'm the bottom line is, if you're coming to work and you're putting in your full effort and you're doing your best, and the just because you get weighed down on a couple of shitty jobs, and this is the problem with flat rate, just because you get weighed down on a couple of shitty jobs doesn't mean that you should be going home with less money. If you're and people always say like, oh, like we have to do flat rate because it encourages productivity and it's profit sharing, and when things are going good, you benefit and all that kind of stuff. And you know what? I worked at an hourly shop for a year when I was in between Ford and Chrysler, right around when COVID started. And I worked at that hourly shop, and our productivity was off the charts because we weren't separate technicians working separate jobs. We were 3 guys in a small place working together. We were doing some fleets for a school board and some other stuff like that. We had a lot of business coming and going, and like we worked like a unit. And because we worked like a unit, and there was no trouble with, oh yeah, I'll give you a hand for 5 seconds, whatever. There was no jealousy, there was no competition, there was no petty bullshit going on, and we just went to work and worked hard and got it done. And because we were getting paid by the hour, like if you're flat rate, oh, you can sit on your phone 10 minutes, yeah, it's my time, who cares? But when you've got someone's paying you by the hour, and then like at least the way my work ethic works, it's like if I was paying somebody by the hour, I wouldn't want to see them fucking around. Like, you don't have to work like you're sweating your bag off, but do something. Like, if there's nothing to do, sweep the floor, help another guy, whatever. And we worked extremely well, and we were a really profitable shop. And
That's a
everyone went home.
challenge it's a challenge to accomplish that for a lot of leaders because one, they may not be strong enough leaders to find strong enough technicians to do that. But conversely, you might be in I won't say unicorn predicament, but the chances of that happening are slim to have 3 people working that well together that are
Yep,
that synced up on a regular basis together. That's a hard thing to do. Look
it
at the
is.
other side of the coin. How hard is it for a leader to try and make that happen? That's really, really,
Well,
really
people are
hard,
very different, right? That's the
right?
thing. And and
100%.
and and
100%.
and to find people like no matter you find a group of 3, 4, 5 guys, yeah, these guys are all going to be different, but to find types of different that all kind of click together is a hard thing. It's a hard thing to do
Yeah.
because people come from different places and have different ideas of like even basic things like social interaction, and you get
Mm.
guys that just don't click and like, oh, I don't like that guy. I don't know why. I just don't like the way he talks, the way he looks, the way he moves around. Like it's really hard to
Especially in a big
absolutely.
shop. You were in a big 25 tech store. You get 25 big personalities in a
Oh
store.
yeah,
It can go sideways real
we had
quick.
we had teams. We had teams. There were 4 teams. Like not like an unwritten rule kind of thing. Like there were just 4 groups
Mhm.
of guys that just didn't like all those other fucking guys. Like, oh yeah,
Mhm.
we got our group and we have our way of thinking and our way of working and we don't upsell fucking every brake service on every car just to grind brake pads like a monkey all day to try and make a couple of hours. No, we do real work. We sell real stuff. And then you got the guys that are just there to jam and flush and take home as much cash. And then you got like the heavy Diag guys that are like, oh, don't bother me, I'm thinking, those guys. And then you got like the guys in the
No,
back,
everything I'm thinking,
don't turn
that
on
would have been
music. I
me.
don't want music. Silence in the shop.
That,
You got that group of
that
guys.
would
And
have
you got
been
like the
me.
used car
That would
guys
have
in the
been
back.
me.
Yeah, it
That would
was
have been
a
me. I
really
would have been so
extraordinary.
distracted.
It was really really extraordinary working in that place to see how divided these people were. It was
And
interesting.
you know what? That's it happens. It's not in every shop.
Yep.
It was in that shop. Maybe it took 2 or 3 guys leaving to break that up enough to maybe it would change a little.
Yeah.
But at the
From
end of the
what I've
day, for
heard, there
me, in
has been
my
a lot of change
experience,
there.
right? Well, yeah, but in my experience, that in a shop not built for, like, if the pay plans aren't structured for teams and the shop isn't structured for dispatch for teams and the advisors aren't structured to feed teams, the fact that there was teams, clicks, whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
means there was poor leadership.
Oh yeah, absolutely awful leadership, and they had 2 managers.
Like,
So
you because you probably had a service manager and a fixed ops director, right?
we had a fixed operations manager and an assistant service manager.
Which is, to me, is always weird because you call someone assistant service manager but don't have a service manager, you have a fixed ops manager. It means you're basically slighting that assistant service manager. Call him a service manager.
What was happening there was they had this fixed operations manager who had been there a long time, and he didn't do much. Honestly, he just kind of sat in his office. If there was a pissed off customer, he would give them the look. We're not going to give you anything. Talk. You know what I mean? But like other than that, like yeah, okay, some stuff. But like the day to day nitty gritties of running the shop, he never really got too involved with. Um, so they just took a
But isn't
service
that by
advisor.
design, though?
No, and
Isn't that really by design? Somebody at that level, fixed ops managers and fixed ops directors, service directors, typically are people who should be defining vision, values. They should be building training programs. They should be
yeah,
doing career development. They should be doing all of the paperwork, all of the reporting, all of the money business side of things, so that the service manager or the assistant service manager does the in your face
yeah.
shit, dealing with the in your face shit. Unfortunately, the secondary problem with someone who is at the top, who is doing 99% paperwork only and isn't getting their hands dirty in some way, shape, or fashion, it means they lose touch with the team.
Yeah, they
So
get
when they are
disconnected.
making decisions, they're not actually making decisions that are relevant to the team that they're leading. It
Mm-hmm.
means that they aren't leaders, they are money managers, they're
He was
business managers, not fixed ops.
when
You
I
know what
was
I mean?
working
Is
there, he basically what he like he was taking the whole service manager role, and then all he did was he just promoted one of the advisors to assistant service manager just to lighten his workload. He was close to retirement, and he just kind of spent like a third of his day watching YouTube videos and eating sandwiches and stuff. Was basically what was going on, right? So that's kind of how that
well,
came about.
so we kind of skipped it a little bit because I want to talk a little bit more about that first year, and we didn't really skip it. You talked about doing your level one, doing your level two, crushing out turbos. But tell me what that first year was like, because even though we've got a little bit in your story, tell me a little bit more detail of what that first year was like at the Ford store.
Like it was a lot of learning. I was lucky. I worked a lot with a guy named like when I was like really early on in the dealership. I worked a lot under a guy named Anthony Van Bommel, And Anthony Van
Mm-hmm.
Bommel, up to the day he retired, he was a top producer in that shop. He was an older guy, tall guy, good shape, and he was like a 12 hours before noon kind of technician. Like he taught me a lot about how to be efficient. Like if he had to go walk to the bathroom to take a piss, he would make sure that he was on his way back, he was grabbing a rotor off the lathe, or he was bringing over a tri-stand to do something he was doing. Like he would never walk anywhere for one purpose. It would always be for a couple of different reasons. And he like instead of
Oh
getting
yes, baby.
yeah, and instead of getting like an oil change first thing in the morning, going, oh, that's bullshit. He would smash it out in 5 seconds, sell a whole bunch of shit, and be on to the next car. Like he didn't like no emotions in the job, just doing the work as fast and as efficiently as possible. And so I learned a lot from that guy early on. And my first year was a lot of just like mechanical knowledge, diagnosing noises, selling. You know what I mean? Like just how to
Mm-hmm.
make money in a shop. And I went to my first year schooling with a lot of knowledge, because I had that year and a half in the co-op program, which is an unpaid position because you're getting a high school credit out of it.
Mm-hmm.
They just let me shadow this guy. Like I didn't have any responsibility. Like yeah, okay, I cleaned up around the shop and helped out and stuff like that because I didn't want to be like a useless wet noodle. But because I didn't have any obligation to actually perform any work, I just shadowed this guy, and for a year and a half, I just got all this like stuff just drilled into me like a drill sergeant. Just this is how you do it. This is how you move. This is how you sit. This is how you do. You know, this is how you do everything. Like wax on, wax off. And I got really, really good programming out of this guy basically really early on. And I went to first year
And
school
that is like the
afterwards.
you are probably the sixth or seventh person, not including my own, that have all said that within that first 2 years, how invaluable your first foreman, your first, whether he was a foreman or not is irrelevant, but your
Yeah,
first foreman, your first mentor in the shop, how invaluable it was to you, not only to your wellness in the shop, but your productivity long term.
yeah,
Just teaching uh, just teaching, like mine didn't even teach me this, but just teaching. So it's like when you go to the bathroom, or when you go to the parts department, or when you go across the shop, never do just one thing.
yeah,
Think the next 3 steps ahead. I got to go to the bathroom. Okay, well, when you're gonna go to the bathroom, what's on the way? Okay, the parts department's on the way. Okay, do you have a ticket out to pull parts for your next ticket?
yeah.
Yes. Okay, walk by the parts store, open up, and knock on the door, whatever
Let
you got to
them.
do to get your
Yeah,
part.
hey, can you
Say,
get
hey,
these parts ready? Go to the
are the
bathroom. By the
part
time you're
are the
done, you come
parts
back. The
ready?
parts are there. Yeah.
Right, just that
Assuming
simple
that's assuming that you have
understanding.
a functional parts department, which is a pretty brave thing to
Hey,
assume.
now we shouldn't rag on parts too much. I know Kaylee every once in a while listens. She'll harp on me if we rag on parts too much. But
Yeah,
yes, if parts are doing their job as effectively as we are doing their job, are doing our job, we are
yeah,
significantly more productive.
and
Like
and
significantly
at
more
that
productive.
at that time we had a really good parts department. I'll be honest, the things were flowing
Marvelous,
very well.
marvelous.
Things were flowing very
All
well.
right, so we had a really great mentor in the first little bit before he retired, and you went through Ford for about 7 years,
Yep.
and then basically COVID happened, or somewhere in there, and then you spent a year at an independent where you're working on buses and you were working tandem effectively with two other techs, and you working really
Yep.
well, and then you ended up at a Chrysler store, which is where you're at now, roughly.
Yeah. So I just want to cover kind of me leaving Ford because there's a bit of an interesting story in there as well. So it kind of ties into the whole like ineffective management thing that they had going on. They kept hiring apprentices that were useless. Like they were like in your way on their phone, like wouldn't do anything kind of thing. And I actually ended up getting asked to leave the Ford store because I would tell these guys like, "Hey, you should probably do your job. Get off your phone." Like, stuff like that because I was an apprentice once and I worked hard and watching these guys come into the place where I've been working for 5 years, 6 years, and just make a mess out of everything. And I can't do my job because there's a pile of cardboard boxes the size of 2 cars in the middle of a bay that just need to be taken out and kind of stuff like that. So I started getting hard on these apprentices and they basically said, hey, we've had some complaints and everyone thinks you're an asshole, so we're going to pay you to get the fuck out of here. And because they
Interesting.
lost, yeah, they just didn't like me because I was I couldn't handle just what they were letting happen in that place. Basically, I had too much of a loud mouth about it, and I was a younger guy at the time, and you know how those kind of things go. And they had lost a third of their sales volume, which trickled down to losing a third of the service volume. And I had asked my manager, I said, "Hey man, I'm not happy here. I'd like you to lay me off." And about a year later, they finally did. They're like, "Hey, we're tired of you complaining all the time. You know, get your shit and get out." And then that's when I ended up working at that independent shop for about a year. And then I got hungry for the dealer money again. So I was working there. We were doing like a lot of GM trucks and stuff like that. It was a great time. I loved my job there, but it just wasn't enough dough, right? And so I started working at a Chrysler dealer.
Before you jump into the Chrysler story, I want to kind of put a mark on that just kind of for a second. You were happy. You were working well. You had
Yeah,
a couple of techs at that shop.
yeah.
You were doing really well. You were
The
jiving really well, but you were working straight time and you
Yep.
were very productive. But for whatever reason, the circumstances within the shop, even though it was straight time or
Mhm.
hourly, as our friends down south call it, um, that hourly straight time wasn't enough.
No, I mean, the wages back in Mississauga compared to where I am now are not very great, but like a flat rate dealership technician would be making like entry licensed guy 32 an hour, and they were paying me 28 straight time. So that
Okay.
wasn't really enough for me. I had said to the service manager, and me and him got along pretty well. I was like, "Hey, like, you know, I'm your best tech. I deserve to get paid more than the other guy. I'd been here almost a year. You know, when are we going to talk about a raise? It's been a while. Oh yeah, we'll talk, we'll talk. And two pay periods went by, and it just I would ask every now and then, yeah, maybe another day, and he would agree, yeah, you know what, you do deserve a raise. You do deserve to get paid the most in this shop because you do really good work. And then he just never gave me a raise. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if it's because he couldn't afford it or what it was. That and the lady working the front counter was Italian, so disaster, right? um,
I have to say that to my Italian listeners, and I've had Italian service advisors and working in Vaughan when it was Colombo Chrysler in the very heavily Italian area of Woodbridge. There's
yeah,
lots of Italians. We had Italian front reception. We had Italian service advisors. I remember Dominic, who used to be a service advisor. They were good. They were
I
flamboyant. They were flamboyant and
I've
they
worked with a
were
lot of Italians that I really
challenging,
really
but
love.
I wouldn't have said mess.
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of Italians that I've really enjoyed working with, and I've got Italians in the family. I don't hate Italians. It's just like a joke, right? Like it's just the best way that I could describe what was wrong with her is she was too Italian. She was too loud. She was too like in your face, and everything had to be a big deal. And it was like everyone was still in high school, and it was just it was tiring to like deal with all the time. But that it was mainly the money why I left there. Aside from the frustration of this lady who every now and then made my life a living hell. But for no better
I
way to put
think
it.
I think there is always a time and place where someone is going to make your life a living hell based
Oh
on
yeah.
your own set of circumstances, right?
Yeah,
Depending on our
exactly.
personalities, our characters, what we're doing, why we're doing. I think one of the opportunities for many mechanics, though, even for you at the time, there might have been an opportunity for you to grow that
Yep.
you may have missed by leaving there. And I think that there's some technicians that who have DM'd me after the show or made comment on one of the episodes, like, you know, I can't do that. It's like, well, you can. It's up to you to grow. It's up to you to learn from whether it's your own mistakes or somebody else's mistakes. Like if somebody's being an
Exactly.
asshole to you, that they aren't making you feel bad.
Yeah.
You are in control of your own emotions, and if you are
Exactly.
allowing them to be in your headspace, that's on you, not on them.
Yeah, she was very like manipulative. Yeah, that's how you say it. And like it was things where I had gone to the owner of the shop and been like, "Hey man, like, you know, she's trying to drive a wedge in between the boys in the shop. She's playing he said she said games and like trying to create all these problems and stuff, and it's frustrating to deal with. And it was just something that just got allowed to get worse and worse and worse and worse. And so in between that and in between the money thing, it was time for me to go, right? But like
Right.
I
So it sounds like even then you had, so understandably at the Ford store, you had difficulty with leadership. You were having difficulty seeing eye to eye. You weren't exactly getting along with the young team at the
Yeah.
time.
And at the time, I was
Probably to the
very hot headed. I was a younger guy. I was like 18, 19, 20 years old. Like I was, in a different
yeah.
state of mind than I am now. So everything was a big deal and stuff like that, right?
If you reflect on it a little bit, was that so? Anthony retired. Is that after he retired?
No, so Anthony retired. I stopped working directly with Anthony a couple of years before he retired, actually, and I started working with
Okay.
another tech called his name was Scott Johnson, and Scott Johnson was our lead Diag guy, and so I got really really heavy into like the weird shit. Like stuff would come from other dealers for Scott because they couldn't figure
Mm-hmm.
it out, and I was his apprentice, and he was a raging alcoholic. So this guy would show up at 10:30 and leave at 6 o'clock. So I would show up at 8 and there'd be three cars in his, because they gave him three bays because he had a lot of shit that tied up bays and just really difficult jobs. So they gave him a lot of space to work. He had a truck hoist, a lighter hoist, and like a flat bay. And so I'd
Mm-hmm.
come in the morning at 8 o'clock, and there'd be three cars in the bays with pieces of masking tape on the windshield. Mike, do this. Mike, do this. Mike, do this. Parts in the parts department, hang them, do whatever, right? And by the time he showed up at 10:30, usually I'd have all that done and wrapped up, and then we'd start the day, bring in the next round of cars, bang through work all day, me and him with three bays, and I'd leave at 5 o'clock. He'd be there till 6:37, do a set of diags, leave him there for me in the morning again, and we just kind of rolled like that every day, which was
Mm-hmm.
again a really good thing because I got to be really involved in some heavy diags that normally like a second or third year apprentice. And I think I was only that was when I came back from school from first year. So I was really early on, and I was just there you go, like there's the toughest shit you're ever going to deal with, and that's how you do it. So I had a good mentor like all the way through. It was just that I got sick and tired of the place, and I honestly started to act out a little bit. And it just wasn't, it just the way that they were running that shop just stressed me out to the point where I just couldn't function there, basically.
Now,
Um,
did you ever bring up the try to say this eloquently? Did you ever bring that up in a way that you think you brought it up professionally, where
yes.
it wasn't where you can say, and whether you put your mother's name on it, and your great grandfather's grave, that kind of thing, you can say beyond a shadow of a doubt that at some point or another you brought your concerns up in a professional way at
Yeah.
least once to say, hey, this isn't working. These are my concerns. This is how I feel. This is my concern. These are the objective things that are happening in the shop. And the really key part here is the objective
Yeah.
things.
Not
If
from my
you brought that up.
perspective, but just these are the facts. Like, not like this is the
Yeah.
way I feel, but this is something that's not right. And for everything in that shop that ended up escalating into becoming a real issue, like 90% of the things did start as a professional conversation. Like, hey, this is a problem. Like a really good example, they hired this one kid, and it was his first day, and they say, "Hey, Mike, show him how to empty the drain carts. Show him how to empty the drain carts." Okay, no problem. So I show the kid, like, here's the pump, here's how you latch the hose on, and, you run the pump, whatever, until it's empty. You put the filters in the bin. And the guy just looks at me, and he takes his hand and just rubs it in the dirty tray of the drain cart and just puts it on my shirt like that. And I'm like, really? You know? And then I go to the service manager and like, hey man, this kid's fucked in his head. And then they just let that behavior continue and they refuse to deal with it. And they're like, yeah, deal with it yourself. I don't care. And then shit like that, would just kind of boil over. Like they would hire guys that thought they were gangsters and oh yo man and like all kind of stuff like that. And they would act tough in the shop and like just really really negative attitudes, really negative behavior, and management just didn't give a shit. They were like, yeah, whatever, not my problem. So yeah, there was like If
Okay.
that place had good management, I might even still be working there today.
Interesting. So moving on from the gangsters and the thugs and the
Yeah,
handprints,
and the,
you're now deep into Dodge.
yeah. So how I got deep into Dodge was put up a resume. I was fed up with my job on a Thursday night, and Friday I had a bit of a stomach ache. It probably looked really bad because they probably
Yeah.
thought I was hungover and just didn't come into work or something because I had a bad day on Thursday. But I legitimately wasn't feeling well Friday morning, and Thursday night I had put my resume out. I had set up an Indeed account and I was looking for work. And Friday morning I wake up, I'm hanging around about 11, 10:30, 11 o'clock. I start feeling better. And I look at my phone. I'm thinking, okay, maybe I'm going to go into work or whatever. And I got a text message from the service manager at the Dodge dealer, like, "Hey, can you come down right now for an interview?" And I had a beard like down to here. And I was like, "Oh fuck, okay, I guess." Like, I shaved the beard off, put my hair up in a ponytail, and I got in my truck and I drove to the Dodge dealer and I sat down and they're like, when can you start? Was just about the only question they had. They're like, "Hey, can you fix cars?" I'm like, "Absolutely, I'm not afraid of anything." They're like, "Great." Like, when do you want to start? I'll give my employer, like, they were slow at the shop at the time, so I figured like a week was probably enough. Like they didn't need me there anyways. It was like right in the slow season, perfect time for me to leave and for them to fill the position. Honestly, worked out really well between us. But so I was like, yeah, probably in a week I'll go give some notice and see. And so I went to back to work on Monday, and I told my boss, like, "Hey, like I start a new job at the Dodge dealer on Monday. Do you want me to work the rest of the week?" "No, I got nothing for you to do. Like, no hard feelings, whatever. Good luck, have fun." Loaded up my stuff on a flatbed truck and had it dropped off at that dealer. And I started working there, and I worked at that dealer, I want to say for 3 or 4 months. It was really, really close to home. It started out really well. Um, they had similar managerial issues, but not nearly as bad. Like, everyone more or less got along really, really well together. Um, but they started to do the classic thing. They found out that I was good, and they just started, like my first couple of months there, I was their top producer. Like, they loved me. I was just pumping out money, upselling. Like, I was selling just like Anthony Van Bommel taught me, right? And I was
Mm-hmm.
running that place. Like, they were in love with me. Oh my God, where did this guy come from? Like, and me and the advisors really clicked. They were really good at selling my estimates, and it was a beautiful first like 2-3 months. And then they started loading me up with really, really shitty jobs. And I had like no formal Chrysler training. I had gone to almost no Chrysler courses at all. I wasn't super familiar with the product. The shop foreman was a potato of a person. The only reason why he was the foreman is because he fucked up his back or his leg or something. And so it was kind of like, he's a hard worker. He's been with the company for a long, long time. Let's give him this foreman position, because then hopefully he won't have to move around as much and he can just kind of deal with stuff and whatever. And he was ridiculous. Like he wouldn't give you brake lube. He'd be, "Oh, you used all that brake lube already? Yeah, I do 6 brake jobs a day, man." Like, stuff like that. They were really, really stingy. And after a couple of months, like, I kind of, in between only making 30-hour weeks, because I was getting weighed down with the jobs that the foreman probably should have been doing, in between that and just a couple of culture things, like they were drinking there. Like, they would just go to the break room and drink in the middle of the day. Like, I wasn't really into that. Like, it was just like not a it was kind of a bit of a scummy place. And I just got it in my head, like, you know what, I shouldn't have came back to a dealer. It's just like last time, they're all the same. Like, I just got to get out of here, right?
They're all the same.
They're
Yeah.
all the same. And so
They're
I
not, but it really feels like that when you've hopped a couple of times and it doesn't feel like you're making any progress.
mm-mm. So anyways, they're all the same. And so I put up my resume, but I was looking for jobs outside of the automotive trade, and I had a couple of things lined up. One was a mobile forklift technician, so I'd be going to warehouses and servicing forklifts. And another one was mobility equipment, so like stair lifts, stuff in old folks' homes, stuff in hospitals, and things like that. But one of the really big things that kind of kept me from getting into those businesses was, at the time, it was in the middle of the COVID hysteria and I wasn't vaccinated. So all these places were like, "Oh, you seem like a great fit. Like, can you provide your vaccination records?" And I'd be like, "No, I don't have that. I don't do that." And then that's where that ended. And it's funny because I got calls back from those places a year and a half later when they finally got to the end of their list, and they're like, "Oh, we just can't hire anybody. What about this guy? Yeah, you know what? We don't care. We'll give him a call." And at that point, I was already on the other side of the country, and I was like, "Hey, man, if you would have given me the job like a year and a half ago, this would have worked out fine. But it's a little too late now." So, anyways, I was looking at getting out of the trade altogether, and this was in the middle of summer, like June, July ish, 2.5 years ago. And the winter before, we had gone out west. We went to Jasper and Banff and Vancouver and Vernon and Edmonton and a whole bunch of national parks, and we just went all over the place. We went to Kelowna and Kamloops on the way back from Vancouver, and just did a whole tour of the West because we knew we wanted to move out here, but like we'd never been, right? So we just wanted to make sure that it was what we expected, and we fell in love with Alberta, and we knew we wanted to move to Alberta, but we weren't ready financially, and like it wasn't something that we were planning on doing right away. And while I had my resume up, I got an offer with relocation assistance and like one of the highest wages that I had been presented, like as a starting wage for like a young journeyman. And so I said, "Hey, like, you know what, let's do it." So I got in contact with a recruiter, and he showed me a bunch of different options. I had offers all the way from Vancouver to the middle of Saskatchewan in prairie towns with nothing there, kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately, I chose to move to Slave Lake, Alberta, to work in another Dodge dealership, just because like I've always, like, me and my wife have both always been like very outdoorsy people. Like we lived in the middle of the city, but every month for one weekend, we would go and rent an Airbnb cabin in the woods somewhere and like stay in a rustic setting just to get away from the city. And like we were always into like camping and going for long hikes with the dogs and all kinds of stuff like that, and just being outdoors. And when I looked into the Slave Lake area, I saw there's this beautiful lake. It's like all crown land. So as far as like going hunting, fishing, hiking, camping, like it's a paradise. Like if you're an outdoorsman, this is a paradise. Like people come up here from Texas to go bear hunting and like stuff like that because it's such
So
a
you got
beautiful
moved
place.
out there. It really sounds like one of the things that's come up is you didn't fit, and then you didn't fit,
Yeah.
and then you didn't fit, and you didn't fit,
And then
and
I found
now
somewhere there where I fit.
and now you found somewhere you fit.
Yeah.
Not and before we assume for a second that you're doing really well where you are right now,
Mm.
let's throw that out for a second.
Six months ago, I would have had a different story to tell you, but we'll get into that.
Let's throw that out for a second. One of the things that many folks that have come across in coaching, and my dad taught me this very early on, you have two environments you live in. You
Yeah.
live at home and you live at work until you retire, and then it's just a home. If you're not happy at home, you're not going to be happy at work.
Mhm.
And it doesn't take much to not be happy at home.
No.
If you have a spouse, or you're still living at home with your parents, or whatever the case may be, it could be just off a little bit, and it completely fucks up your day at work.
Oh yeah.
And what you've just said now is like you're an outdoors person.
Mhm.
Like between you and your wife, you're outdoor people. You like being outdoors, where real outdoors, not outside on the asphalt,
No.
outdoors.
Like
And you now have
we go
the
hunting,
opportunity to be
and
outdoors.
we we go hunting and we process our own animals like right here at home. Like we are outdoor people. Like we're not just like, oh yeah, I like the woods. Like no, like we are outdoors people, exactly. Like we
And I think
everything. We
one
got
of the
we got
things
chickens
that
in the
service
backyard.
leaders and major leaders of stores, that it has obviously not come up, because one of the things you said is one of the leaders had said, can you fix cars, as an interview question.
Yeah, like are
Well,
you good?
no shit, Sherlock. Are
Yeah,
you any good? No shit, Sherlock.
that's
I
what I'm
think
here.
I'm good. Whether I'm actually good is remains to be seen by you on at the end of the month on the number of hours that I turn.
Yeah.
But absolutely, I think I'm good. But how relevant is that as a specific and only question? It's not.
The
Ask about, what do you do? What do you do outside of work? What are the things that are going to motivate you as an individual to be
yeah.
better than you are today tomorrow? What are the things that are going to be motivating to you to be, the kind of person that works well in a team, because the environment at work mimics the environment at home? Like I've said this several times. You brought up a thing for outdoors, and let's suggest it. And I think this brought it several episodes back. If you, as a mechanic, are walking into a shop, you get a fairly quick read of what the shop is like for the most part, just by 30-second walk into the shop.
Yep.
But if you don't ask questions, especially during the interview process, where if 90% of the shop is 25 and under, listening to R&B and driving lowered Civics, and you are an outdoorsman,
Yeah.
you're not gonna fit.
Hey, I
And
love
especially,
R&B. I love R&B. I got lowered cars. I got lowered
but
cars.
you get what I
I'm
mean.
dual
Like,
purpose.
folks,
Don't do me like that.
I'm not going to do you like that, but my point being more specifically, if these people are not your kind of people, it's going to be exceptionally more difficult for you to work well. I
Yeah.
understand there's a portion of adaptability, there's a portion of resilience, there's a portion of all of those things that go towards your character and building character over a period of time. But if there isn't some semblance of attachment, some semblance of cohesion right off the bat, it's awfully difficult to create something from nothing. But
Yeah.
if you have something, just
Anything in common.
something,
Hmm.
right? Just anything in common that you can latch onto to say, hey, these people, these guys like Civics, these girls like trucks, I can get along with a bunch of them, but we all really enjoy modifying cars. Maybe that's
Yeah,
the
we all
thing.
like
Maybe
turbos.
it's
We can all
fishing.
get
Maybe
along, right?
we all like turbos, whatever the case
Yeah.
may be.
Yeah.
Something genuinely in common that the leaders need to be finding as part of the interview process.
Hmm.
And Barrich says it regularly. I don't know if you've listened, how much you've listened to. Michael Barrich said, we need to meet customers where they're at. Right. But we also need to meet employees where they're at. That
Yep.
means the team that you have now is more important than the person you're trying to bring on board.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
Fundamentally, the people that you have on board are more important than the person you're trying to bring on board. So you want to make sure the person you're bringing on board
Is going to work with your team.
meets or exceeds
Yeah.
with the team.
So,
Awesome. So
anyways,
we're into there,
yeah.
and
So,
you're outdoors. You're scurrying around Crown Land because it's something you absolutely love to do, and I'm losing my voice here
yeah.
exceptionally rapidly. So I'm gonna ask the really important question here. After all of these, you've moved from Ford, you've done a stint at an independent, you've done some stints at a Chrysler store, you've been taught by a mentor, and you've had a lot of experience in between, and between the brands, between the independent, the straight time, the hourly, and the flat rate. What's one piece of advice that you would give a mechanic to be happy tomorrow?
Uh, you got to know when something's not working. You have to know what you're worth, and you have to know what you expect, and you have to know when to give up and get out, because I've worked with a lot of guys that are stuck in the same negative situation, and they bring their negativity home, and they're negative all the time, and they're stuck in the Truman Show. I don't know if you're familiar with that
Mm-hmm.
concept, with that movie. They're stuck in the Truman Show. They're afraid. I don't want to try anything new. I don't want to go somewhere else because maybe it'll be worse, but you know what, maybe it'll be better. And don't let yourself get trapped. Don't get Stockholm syndrome if just because you've been in a place for a couple of years and you think you owe them something. If you're every day that you live, you only get one chance at that day, and if you wake up dreading what's going to happen for the rest of your day, that's a waste of your time. And you need to figure out how to make your life worth living. And if that means going to work somewhere else or going to do something else, that's what you have to do, because if you're not happy, you're not living.
I think fundamentally what you're saying there is daily self-reflection, and that is epic advice. That is epic
Mm-hmm.
advice right there. Make sure that you're valuing yourself as much as you are valuing around. Don't be afraid to make change.
Yeah.
We don't get to do things over. Like there is no do-overs.
No, you
The
get one
minute
chance
passed
in
is
each
the
day.
minute passed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
100%.
And
Mike,
on
that's
that
awesome advice.
on that note, like I'm putting in my 2 weeks notice on November 1st because
Damn.
I've been working at this place just over 2 years, and for 2 years I was really happy. Me and the service manager we had gone hunting and fishing together. Like this summer, I bought a boat. We went out and caught some walleye. This guy can't see, by the way. He's got a degenerative eye disease, where basically like anything that's in front of him, he can only see his peripherals. So like at work, he has to use a magnifier to read work orders and stuff like that. And I had a huge amount of respect for him because he's working through his disability and like really doing a good job. And he was one of the best service managers that I worked for a long time. But recently, a lot of negative stuff has been going on, and he has not been doing his job, and he's been like he took on a new technician and let this guy walk all over our service advisor that we train from the ground up. It's really hard to hire people out here. He let this new guy walk all over our new service advisor, and the new service advisor said, "Hey man, I don't like what's going on. Like, can we have a chat with this guy so this doesn't happen again?" And his answer to that was, "Well, let's just get you two guys in the room together, and I'll tell this technician that you were talking shit, and I'll let him walk all over you for another 20 minutes." And this service advisor was like, "Hey, man, I'm going home. Like, we can talk about this tomorrow." And the manager said, "If you're not back here by 1, you're fired." And so now he's been working the desk alone without any service advisors for a couple of weeks. This new guy he brought in is like a known scam artist. Like this whole place that I felt like was my home and that I had been building for so long and getting along with everybody very well. It was like a dream come true. It was the dealership that I never could have imagined had ever been there. It crumbled in like 2 months. And that place is going to
Wow.
be empty. That place is going to be empty by the end of the year because one of our apprentices, when he comes back from school, he may or may not be staying. He's really thinking of not staying. The other apprentice is just coming back from school. His journeyman quit a couple of months ago, and he's got something lined up elsewhere. I'm leaving. Another apprentice is leaving. And he's going to be left with one journeyman that has a reputation for spending 4 months at a shop at a time, and another guy who doesn't want to work there anymore because of the same reason as me, because of what he's seen.
Mm-hmm.
And all I had to do to get a job somewhere else was send one text message. And now I'm getting out of the automotive trade, and I'm going to start working for a company that runs mobile service trucks, and they service oil field equipment, gen sets, pumps, stuff like that. Um,
Yep. If you've listened
I'm
to any of the episodes, you know that Marshall Sheldon is a frequent flyer at the Ford store, putting out his business card, getting the automotive folks into HD because
yeah,
the hourly time, the good pay, and the HD, because it's statistically about. I'm trying to remember what Marshall said, and he can quote me. He can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of about 15% more hourly
yeah,
in HD, pretty much across the board. And OT is a thing. It's not like it's
yeah.
hourly, where in the standard automotive shop where they want you working from 8 to 5. That's it.
the the bottom line for me, and the biggest push for me, is I'm just tired of getting screwed around at these dealerships. And I know that no matter how long something is good, nothing lasts forever. And just working flat rate and being in that competitive work environment and just dealing with fully grown 14-year-olds all the time and all that kind of stuff. And what you said about overtime, that's one of the biggest things that I'm excited about, because I find myself working sometimes. You stay until 10 o'clock. As a flat rate guy, you're there, you're tired, your productivity goes down. The amount of money that you're making when you stay that late is less than if you would have came in at 8 o'clock the next morning and started working, because your productivity would be up. But now I'm going to be working overtime and actually making overtime. Like this job that I'm going to be doing, I may drive 3 hours to get to some site, and I may do 4 hours of work, 5 hours of work once I'm there, and then those extra overtime hours that I spend driving home, that's extra money. Whereas like if I was flat rate, all that extra work and extra time just basically goes down the drain. You don't get anything extra for it. And so that's a huge thing. That's another huge motivator that's pushing me to get into this other field, is
And
because they
it's a
pay me
challenge
good.
because you basically got yourself in a position where, similar to Russell Wickham, where he moved shops enough times that I don't necessarily think that he found himself in shops that were really great like you experienced for that first 2 years, but it was good enough. And
Mhm.
then the more you know, the less you make kind of deal would come into play.
Yeah, and that's
Similarly
happened to me
speaking,
here as well.
right? So it's we want to. I know one of the, and I preach this on a regular basis, is that work mix is something that is not looked at frequently enough. It really, really isn't. Looking at, you know, service managers who are inexperienced and may or may not care don't look at it. They just don't look at it because it's not a metric that they're taught to look at or even summarize in some way. Mostly because those service managers were service advisors,
Hmm.
and the leader that is holding them accountable doesn't care about the work mix. They only care about the output. They're
Yeah.
looking at productivity and they're looking at output. They're not looking at the granular level necessarily. Some do. I've met some that do. I've many on SDL do. But when you break things down into work mix, what is your CP and warranty slash internal work mix? If you're less than 75% CP per tech, you're gonna have employee churn. It's
Yep.
just it's just a fact.
We've got
Because
extremely high
the
turnaround. It's insane.
25% of the work that you're doing on warranty, they're not making enough to make their hours.
Yep.
Almost guaranteed that like you mentioned, I think you used the number 30, your 30 hours in a 40-hour week. That is fairly close. You think 75% and 25% warranty. Well, the offset usually means somewhere in the neighborhood of 75% CP usually means 75% of the week.
Yep.
Usually. However,
Mhm.
there's a roll point. There's somewhere between 75 and 90%. There's a roll point based on the person, based on the training, based on the brand, based on the shop. There's a roll point where it's the hockey stick occurs. So you go from say 75% CP, which is essentially 30 hours a week, in 30 hours out of 40 is what you generate, to say 85% of it's CP, and all of a sudden they're making 55 hours a week in 40. It's a really weird role, and it's different for every shop, but it's somewhere between 75 and 90%. So any service managers out there listening right now that have never done a CP warranty mix check, just look at the division. Do the number of CP hours, number of warranty hours, number of internal hours by technician, and get a percentage. If your technicians, if any of them, are generating less than 75% of their hours on CP, make damn sure you're checking your dispatching, checking out who is dispatching work, why they're getting that, making sure their training levels are adequate based on the dispatching and what's in the system. Make sure all of that is correct, and make damn sure that if there is anybody out there that's at like 65% or something stupidly low like that, go out there every day. Make sure that they're actually getting the work they're supposed to get for a good mix, or else you're
Yeah.
going to lose them. You're just going to lose them.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
Mike,
And that's
I
exactly what
really
happened to me.
appreciate your
Like
insight.
in between the shop culture and the morale, and like, cuz no one leaves their job because of the money. Let's be real. Usually the reason why people choose to move along is because they are not happy, right? But
And money.
and
It's
and
usually
and
it's
money.
usually
Money.
like it's usually like the receptionist is a mess. The service leader won't give me a raise. The
Yeah.
service leader doesn't communicate. The
Art
service leader
department
doesn't provide the
sucks.
training, and the pay is shitty.
Yeah. But like aside from all that stuff, like when I first started working there, again, before they realized that I was the guy, I was making 190-hour months, almost 200-hour months, like on a regular basis. Like if I went under 180 hours a month for like a regular work week kind of hours, it was like, oh, like what's wrong? What happened? Like I must have, been slacking off or something. And then as my recognized skill level increased, like when I started working there, I had never rebuilt an automatic transmission. Now I'm proficient. And they figured out, hey, this guy's really good with heavy diags. Anytime anybody fucked something up, it went to my bay right away. And as those responsibilities increased, and they also had me, I was the main guy training apprentices. But when like a normal shop would have like, okay, the job is mine, and you teach the apprentice. This shop would be the apprentice gets the job, and you help them for free, which is not how you run a shop, right?
No.
So they had me doing all that shit, and they were paying me 10 hours a month extra for doing like 30 extra hours a month work, helping all these apprentices make the shop money. And my hours went from 180, 190 down to like 160, which is how many hours I was spending in the shop. And the whole point of flat rate is like, let's sell, and make some money. What if I'm grinding away every day and just barely escaping with with the hours that I've got in it, like because of the extra responsibilities and the uneven distribution of difficult jobs.
The challenge is treating you like a shop foreman without paying you like one. And if they don't
I
pay
was
you
the
like a shop
volunteer
foreman,
shop
they can't
foreman. Yeah,
treat you like a shop foreman.
yeah,
And
and
this is the
that's the problem.
challenge where the more you know, the less you earn comes into play. And this is where a constructive professional conversation needs to come in, which obviously it sounds like you've had,
Yep.
and you're not getting anywhere. This is where, this is where I say writing things down. If anybody's out there that's in this similar circumstance and you feel like you're overworked, you've got apprentices coming to ask you questions, you've got other technicians asking you questions, you're fixing all of the bullshit that everybody else fucks up, or it's the stuff that's coming from another shop that somebody is screwed up, or somebody's tried to fix themselves, whatever. When you start doing the shit of the shit because they know that you can fix it, that is foreman work.
Yep.
If you are doing foreman work, you should get foreman pay.
Mm-hmm.
That's easy math, right? That's easy math. But instead of simply asking for a raise, and this is where many technicians who have come to me through coaching have made the mistake of saying, I need a raise because I deserve more because of this, this, and this. That is unfortunately not the best route to go after it, because these are people who are business focused. They're not looking at deserve focus. They're not looking at those kinds of things. You have to document actions.
Mm-hmm.
So in your circumstance, it sounds like you're going to be leaving anyway. But if you happen to be out there listening in a similar circumstance to Mike, and you're doing work with apprentices and you're doing work with other technicians, you need to be making a log of those work orders. You need to be making a log of what you did, why you did, and how you did. And I realize it's time consuming to do that, but it's less time consuming to do that it's less time consuming to do that and then get paid when you ask appropriately, because you have documented cases over the last 90 days of saying, these are the people I helped. This is why I was helping them. These are the other people that I helped.
Yeah.
This is why I was helping them. My production over the last 90 days went from, as you can pull the report yourself again, I was doing 190 to 200 hours in a month. I'm now doing 150 to 160 hours in a month. Yes, that's still somewhat productive, but that's a loss of 40 to 50 hours a month out of my pocket.
That's huge.
Somewhere in there, if I've averaged that number for 2 years, and then I start taking on extra responsibilities, there is some expectations for a raise or a compensation plan structured to continue doing what I'm doing. I'm happy to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't lose. And let's say you're making $30 an hour, 50 hours, that's $1,500 a month.
Yep. And that's exactly the conversation.
It's a car. It's a car a year that you're losing.
Just exactly how you laid it down right there is exactly the conversation that I had with the owner. And the reason why I had it with the owner and not the service manager is because I told myself, I'm going to talk to my service manager about this. But he's got what everyone likes to call rampage mode. Like, he's not in a state of mind to have a conversation kind of thing. He's just going, right? So I'm like, okay, I'll wait until a day when the service manager is not in rampage mode. And 6 months went by. And I'm like, okay, fuck this. I'm just going to talk to the owner, because the state of mind that the service manager is in, if I talk to him anything about anything, he's just going to get defensive and he's going to come back at me with some negative shit because he's a really confrontational guy when he's in his rampage mode. So I sit down with the owner. I'm like, hey, this is what's been going on. Are you aware that I've been getting this 10 hour a month bonus? No, the owner didn't know that. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm basically in an in-between situation here where I'm the shop foreman, but I'm not the shop foreman. And I love what I do. And I love teaching these apprentices. And I love my job and I love working here. And I don't want to go anywhere else, but something has to change because the amount of effort that's going in is going up. And the amount of money that I'm taking home is going down. And it's not fair to me that I'm taking a financial hit because I'm doing such a good job. And so I sat down with the owner, and the owner was like, well, why didn't you go to the service manager? And I'm like, he can be kind of tough to talk to, but maybe just, have a conversation with him and like see where it goes and whatever. And right before I had that conversation with the owner, our service advisor, the guy who I was just telling you about, they had hired a new service advisor and he was training her, and he found out that she was making $2,000 more a month than he was while she was getting trained. She ended up leaving like a month in because she didn't like the way the place was run. It was too stressful, and the rampage mode put her completely off of the job working with that service manager. She couldn't deal with him. He was too high stress. So he went to the owner over the service manager. I went to the owner over the service manager, and then we hire this guy who's harassing all the employees in the dealership, the guy who was harassing that service advisor, and he was harassing a girl in the parts department and made her cry. And her boyfriend is one of the apprentices that's quitting his job. They met there, right? So, anyways, this guy, after me and the other guy went to the owner, he went to the owner and he said, "Hey, like, this has got to stop. Like, the service manager is just setting fires in the shop and letting them burn. And, like, it's a fucking disaster out there. Like, everybody's pissed off. Everybody wants to quit their job. Like, something's got to change." And everyone's telling the owner, something's got to change. So he calls a meeting in the middle of the shop with everybody and he says, "This service manager is doing a great job. If you don't like it, get the fuck out. We're here to make money. If you don't like it, get the fuck out." And so everyone's just getting out. It's wild.
On that note,
Yeah,
well,
it's
I
crazy.
hate to leave it on a bombshell, and
Yeah.
it's going to be a challenge for some to hear some of this information.
Yeah.
For sure, there's going to be some that's going to resonate with. I think, knowing your value, that piece of advice there is golden advice. Understanding that there's a limit to what you are willing to do in order to make things work.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to figure out for yourself what that limit is, so that
Yeah,
you
don't just
set
give
your
up right away.
boundaries and so forth.
That's the thing,
Right.
right?
You do your due diligence. Make
Yeah.
sure you put in the effort, because the last thing you want to do is get yourself in a position where you're hopping because you don't like something. You do have to try and be adaptable. You do have to try and understand that somebody might be going through something, but that's a really good piece of advice. And I think that's a really good way to end, and to understand that there's a lot of different circumstances out there. But Mike, I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for
I really
having me
do.
on, man. It's been a blast.
Thank you very much.
All right. You enjoy your evening, buddy.
And